If you graduated college in the last 2 years and you're still looking for your first real job, you've probably already been told why. AI. Some Stanford researchers ran the numbers and found something startling. A 16% decline in employment for young workers in the most AI-exposed jobs. The story seems settled, except the same researchers who found that number went back, added more controls, and found the timing doesn't quite line up the way the simple version of the story suggests. And a separate study of 25,000 workers found that companies actually using AI weren't the ones doing the most damage. So which is it? Is AI quietly closing the door on an entire generation's first jobs? Or is it a convenient scapegoat for something else entirely? The honest answer is, both stories are partly right. And the real picture is more specific than either headline. This is the frontier economy. Let's look at what the data actually shows. In November 2025, 3 Stanford researchers, Eric Brynjolfsson, Bharat Chanda, and Ruyu Chen, published a paper called Canaries in the Coal Mine, built on something most labor studies don't have: actual payroll records, not surveys, not LinkedIn data. Monthly payroll data from ADP, the largest payroll provider in the country, covering millions of workers at tens of thousands of firms. Their headline finding: workers aged 22 to 25 in the most AI-exposed occupations, software development, customer service, clerical work, saw employment fall 16% relative to less exposed jobs, even after controlling for firm-level shocks. Meanwhile, more experienced workers in those exact same jobs were fine. Employment for them held steady or grew. The researchers were careful with their language. They called these young workers canaries in the coal mine, an early signal, not a final verdict. And critically, they found the damage wasn't showing up as pay cuts. Wages for affected workers barely moved. The adjustment was happening entirely through hiring. Companies weren't paying junior workers less. They were simply hiring fewer of them. The mechanism in the researchers' own framing comes down to a distinction between automation and augmentation. Where AI was used to automate a task, replace it outright, entry-level hiring fell. Where AI was used to augment a worker's existing output, make them faster at something they were still doing, there was no comparable decline. That distinction turns out to matter for almost everything else in this episode. Here's what doesn't usually make it into the headline version of this study. The researchers themselves went back and checked their own work harder. In February 2026, the same team published an update. Using their broadest set of controls, they found that the decline in AI-exposed occupations only becomes statistically significant starting in 2024, and that earlier-looking declines, the ones that seem to kick off right alongside ChatGPT's release in late 2022, were likely influenced by factors that had nothing to do with AI at all. That's a real, meaningful walkback from the original framing, and it's worth sitting with. It doesn't mean the effect isn't real. It means the clean, simple version of the story. AI shows up, entry-level jobs immediately start disappearing, doesn't hold up as cleanly as the first headlines suggested. Something else was happening in 2022 and 2023, and AI's specific fingerprint only becomes clear later. A separate, well-designed study adds another wrinkle. A 2025 NBER paper tracking 25,000 workers across 7,000 workplaces found precisely zero effect on earnings or hours in any occupation. And, strikingly, it still replicated the early career employment decline. The decline showed up even at firms that weren't actually adopting AI. If a company not using AI at all is still seeing the same hiring pattern as one that is, AI adoption itself can't be the thing driving the difference. So what is? The leading alternative explanation points somewhere much less exciting than artificial intelligence: interest rates. The Federal Reserve cut rates to near zero in March 2020 and held them there for 2 years. Companies borrowed and hired accordingly. Meta nearly doubled its headcount in 3 years. Alphabet grew by 70,000 employees. When rates rose sharply afterward, that hiring became expensive to sustain, and entry-level positions, the easiest to cut, the hardest to justify under tighter budgets, were often first to go. There's even a survey data point that should make you raise an eyebrow. In a Resume.org survey of 1,000 hiring managers, 59% admitted to emphasizing AI's role in layoffs because, in their own words, it plays better with stakeholders than citing financial constraints. Mark Andreessen has called AI a silver bullet excuse for layoffs driven by pandemic-era overhiring. Sam Altman, who, by the way, has every incentive to talk up AI's power, not down, has called the practice AI washing. Here's the thing worth holding on to from all of this. Interest rates cause the layoffs, and AI is reshaping entry-level work, are not actually competing explanations. They can both be true, pointing at different parts of the same picture. The rate-driven story explains the timing and the trigger, why hiring froze hard starting around 2022 and 2023, and why so many companies reached for AI transformation as the public explanation instead of "we overhired and now we're correcting." That part looks less like an AI story and more like an old-fashioned business cycle dressed up in newer language. But the Stanford team's most carefully controlled finding, the one that survives after stripping out tech sector overhiring, remote work effects, and excluding companies that could blame the pandemic, is specifically about which jobs recover and which don't once the cycle turns. Older workers in AI-exposed roles are fine. Workers in low AI exposure entry-level roles are fine. The damage is narrowly concentrated in young workers, in roles where AI specifically automates rather than augments their work. That's a structural finding, not a cyclical one, and it doesn't depend on whether the original layoffs were rate-driven or AI-driven in the first place. Put simply, the recession-like freeze probably got the ball rolling for reasons that had little to do with AI. But the freeze isn't thawing evenly. The jobs coming back are disproportionately the ones AI doesn't easily replace. The jobs not coming back are disproportionately the ones it does. This matters for more than this year's graduating class, and it matters for more than economists who like a tidy debate. Entry-level jobs have always done double duty. They're paid work, and they're also the training system the rest of the economy quietly depends on. Junior analysts learn which numbers can be trusted. Young developers learn how production systems actually fail in practice, not just in theory. New hires in nearly every field learn judgment by doing the unglamorous version of the job first. If that rung of the ladder keeps thinning, for whatever combination of reasons, the senior talent of the next decade has fewer places to come from. That's the part worth taking seriously, regardless of how the interest rate versus AI debate eventually settles. Some researchers are already proposing fixes aimed squarely at this, embedding AI literacy and verification skills directly into degree programs, expanding paid co-ops and apprenticeships so students build judgment in real workplaces before they graduate, and creating targeted incentives for employers to keep hiring into structured, AI-augmented entry-level roles instead of cutting them outright. If you're early in your career in one of these exposed fields, the honest takeaway isn't give up or panic. It's find the roles built around augmentation, not pure automation, and build the judgment that AI still can't reliably substitute for. If you're the one making hiring decisions, the data suggests entry-level hiring isn't just an expense to optimize this quarter. It's the pipeline your own senior team gets built from later. The interest rates will eventually come back down, the way they always have. Whether the entry-level ladder grows back the same way is a separate, much less certain question. And right now, nobody actually knows the answer. That's the frontier. Back to your inbox.